There is a state of mind that most people experience only in brief moments and never learn to sustain. It happens when you are so absorbed in what you are doing that thought disappears, when you are not thinking about the task, not judging your performance, not worrying about the outcome. You are simply doing, fully present, completely engaged. And in those moments, there is a clarity and ease that feels almost effortless. Time changes, self-consciousness vanishes, and what remains is pure action, pure presence. No mental interference, just flow. And then the mind returns. The thoughts come back, the judging, the worrying, the analyzing, and that clarity is lost. But what if you could access that state more often? What if there was a way to live with less mental noise, more presence, more of that effortless clarity? The Japanese have a word for this state. They call it Mushin, and it is one of the most powerful concepts for calming the mind that has ever been articulated. Welcome to the quiet path. This is a space where we step away from the constant chatter of our thinking minds, where we sit with what is difficult, where we remember that peace is not found in having perfect thoughts, but in learning to act without being controlled by thought. Here, we do not chase elaborate techniques or complex philosophies. We simply look at timeless understandings that point to something real, something you have already experienced but perhaps never learned to cultivate. And today, we are exploring Mushin, a concept that comes from Japanese martial arts and Zen Buddhism, a state of mind that is both empty and full, still and responsive, calm and completely alive. And understanding it, even intellectually at first, begins to change how you experience your own mind. You know what it feels like when your mind is noisy, when you are doing one thing but thinking about 10 others, when you are having a conversation but also planning what you will say next, when you are trying to complete a task but your mind is judging every step, worrying about mistakes, comparing your performance to some imagined standard. This is the mind that most people live with constantly. The mind that never stops commenting, never stops analyzing, never stops getting in its own way. And this mental noise is exhausting. It makes simple things difficult. It makes difficult things overwhelming. It prevents you from being fully present with anything. And it creates a constant low-level anxiety that feels normal only because it is so familiar. Mushin translates literally as no mind. But this does not mean unconsciousness. It does not mean becoming blank or thoughtless in the sense of being unaware. It means acting without the interference of self-conscious thought, without the constant mental commentary that usually accompanies action. When you are in Mushin, you are completely present with what you are doing. Your actions arise naturally, spontaneously, without the lag of overthinking. You respond to what is happening without first filtering it through layers of judgment and analysis. And paradoxically, this state of no mind is when the mind actually works best, when it is most clear, most effective, most calm. In traditional Japanese martial arts, Mushin was considered essential. A swordsman facing an opponent could not afford to think, could not afford to deliberate or analyze or worry, because thought takes time, and in combat, that fraction of a second spent thinking could mean death. So the masters trained their students to act without thinking, to respond directly, to let the body move without the mind interfering. And this was not about becoming mindless or reckless. It was about training so thoroughly that action could arise from a deeper place than conscious thought, from intuition, from presence, from a kind of knowing that exists before words. But Mushin is not just for swordsmen. It is for anyone who wants to live with less mental noise, with more presence, with less anxiety. Because most of the suffering in your mind comes from the constant thinking about what you are doing instead of simply doing it. From the judging, the second guessing, the worrying about whether you are doing it right, whether you are good enough, whether you will succeed or fail. And all of this mental activity creates friction, creates tension, creates the sense that everything is harder than it needs to be. But when you can access Mushin even briefly, that friction dissolves. Things become simpler, clearer, and you discover that you are far more capable when you are not thinking so much about being capable. Think about a time when you were completely absorbed in something. Maybe you were playing music or painting or working on a project that captured your full attention, and you lost track of time, lost sense of yourself as someone doing the thing. There was just the thing itself, just the experience, no separation between you and the action. This is Mushin. This is what it feels like when the mind stops interfering, and notice how it felt. Not forced, not strained, but easy, natural. And often, whatever you were doing, you did it well, not because you were trying hard, but because you were not in your own way. The challenge is that you cannot force Mushin. You cannot think your way into it, because the very act of trying to achieve it creates the mental activity that prevents it. Mushin arises when thinking is no longer necessary, when you are so present, so engaged that there is no space for the commentary, no need for the analysis, and this usually happens when you are doing something you have practiced so much that it has become natural. When the body knows what to do without the mind needing to direct every step. This is why the martial artists trained for years, not just to learn techniques, but to practice them so thoroughly that they could be performed without thought, so that in the moment of need, Mushin could arise naturally. But you do not need to be a martial artist to access this. You can experience Mushin in ordinary activities, when you are washing dishes and you are fully with the sensation of water and soap and movement. When you are walking and you are simply aware of each step without thinking about where you are going. When you are listening to someone and you are truly present with their words instead of planning your response. These are moments of Mushin. Moments when the mind is quiet enough that you are simply experiencing without the constant internal narration. And these moments are available more often than you realize, not because you need special training, but because you need to stop adding so much thought to everything you do. Most people believe that more thinking makes them more effective, that they need to constantly analyze and plan and evaluate to do things well. But this is not true. Thinking is useful in its place, for planning, for learning new things, for solving problems that require analysis. But once you know what to do, once you are engaged in the doing, thinking often becomes interference. It slows you down, it creates doubt, it prevents the natural flow that happens when you simply act. And Mushin is about recognizing this, about learning to trust that you can act without needing to think about every detail. That your body, your intuition, your trained responses, these can guide you without the mind needing to control everything. There is a story about a Zen master and a student. The student asks how to achieve enlightenment. The master says, when hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. The student protests that everyone does this. The master replies, no, when most people eat, they think 1,000 thoughts. When they sleep, they dream 1,000 dreams. But when I eat, I just eat. When I sleep, I just sleep. This is Mushin. This is being fully present with what you are doing instead of being lost in thought about it. And it sounds simple, but it is profoundly difficult for most people, because the habit of thinking constantly is so ingrained that it feels impossible to stop. But you do not need to stop thinking altogether. You need to learn when thinking is useful and when it is just noise. When you are learning something new, thinking is necessary. You need to understand, to analyze, to figure things out. But once you understand, once you are engaged in the practice, the thinking can fall away. And this is where Mushin becomes available, not by forcing your mind to be empty, but by being so engaged with what you are doing that there is no space for unnecessary thought. By being so present that the commentary simply stops because it is no longer needed. Consider how you approach simple tasks. Making coffee, getting dressed, driving a familiar route. Most people do these things while their mind is somewhere else entirely. Thinking about work, replaying yesterday, planning tomorrow. And so they never actually experience the task. They are not present with it. They do it on autopilot while the mind chatters away. But what if you did these things with full attention? What if when you made coffee, you were simply there with the process, noticing the smell, the sound, the movement, not thinking about it, just experiencing it? This is practice for Mushin. This is training your mind to be present instead of constantly elsewhere. And when you practice this with simple things, it becomes available for more complex ones. When you are in a difficult conversation, instead of thinking about what you will say next, you can simply listen, fully. And when it is your turn to speak, the words come, not from planning, but from genuine response to what was said. When you are facing a problem, instead of spinning in anxious thought about it, you can simply engage with what needs to be done, one step at a time, without the constant mental evaluation of whether you are doing it right. And you discover that things move more smoothly, that you are more effective not because you are thinking less, but because you are thinking appropriately. Thinking when thinking serves, and being present when present serves. There is also something else that happens in Mushin, a kind of trust. Trust in yourself, in your capability, in your ability to respond to what arises without needing to control everything through thought. Most people do not trust themselves this way. They believe they need to think constantly to make sure they do not mess up, to make sure they are good enough. But this lack of trust creates the very problems they are trying to avoid. The constant monitoring creates self-consciousness. The constant evaluation creates doubt. And these things interfere with natural capability. But when you can let go, when you can act without the interference of self-conscious thought, you discover that you are more capable than you believed, that your intuition is wiser than you knew, that your body knows things your mind does not need to figure out. This is not about becoming reckless or careless. Mushin is not thoughtlessness in the sense of being stupid or irresponsible. It is thought-free action that arises from deep presence and training, from having practiced enough that you no longer need to think through every step, from trusting yourself enough to act directly. And this trust, this capacity to be present without interference, this is what creates the calm that Mushin brings. Because when you are not constantly thinking about yourself, judging yourself, worrying about yourself, there is peace, there is a quietness, even in the middle of action, even in the middle of challenge. The mind is still because it is not creating unnecessary turbulence. It is simply responding, clearly, directly, without all the extra noise. You can begin cultivating Mushin in small ways. Choose one activity each day where you practice being fully present, where you let go of thinking about it and simply do it. Notice when your mind wanders into commentary or judgment and gently bring yourself back to the direct experience, to the sensation, to the action itself. Do not judge yourself when the mind wanders. That is just more mental noise. Just notice and return, again and again. And over time, this capacity for presence grows. This ability to act without interference strengthens, and you find that you can access it more easily, in more situations, until it becomes a way of being rather than something you occasionally achieve. The paradox of Mushin is that you cannot grasp it by trying. The more you chase it, the more it eludes you, because the chasing itself is mental activity, is thinking about the state rather than being in it. So the practice is indirect. You practice presence. You practice letting go of unnecessary thought. You practice trusting yourself to act without constant self-monitoring. And Mushin arises naturally from these practices, not because you made it happen, but because you stopped preventing it, because you removed the interference. And what was always there beneath the mental noise could finally be experienced. There is a quality to life lived with more Mushin, a lightness, an ease. Things that once felt heavy and difficult become simpler, not because they changed, but because you are meeting them differently, without the weight of constant thought, without the friction of self-consciousness. Just clear, present action. And this changes everything. Your work becomes less exhausting. Your relationships become more genuine. Your mind becomes quieter, not because you have eliminated thoughts, but because you have learned when to let them go, when to act without them, when to simply be present without the constant internal commentary. And in that presence there is a peace that most people spend their whole lives seeking in the wrong places. They look for it in having perfect circumstances or perfect thoughts. But it is here, available in any moment, when you can let the mind rest, when you can act without interference, when you can simply be. This is Mushin, and it is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. If you found something here that opens a door for you, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to The Quiet Path, not because you need more concepts to think about, but because this space exists for those who are ready to experience what lies beyond constant thinking, for those who want to discover the calm that comes not from controlling the mind, but from learning when to let it rest. And perhaps what helped you understand Mushin today will help someone else tomorrow who has been trapped in mental noise and needs to know there is another way. Walk slowly, see clearly. I'll see you again on The Quiet Path.